Good evening. The United States has now officially reached its borrowing limit, prompting the Treasury Department to take a series of, quote, extraordinary measures so the federal government can pay its bills. That's at best a short-term fix. But to avoid long-term default, think unpaid Social Security and veterans benefits. Among other nightmarish consequences, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is urging leaders in Congress to, quote, act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. But Republican officials are insisting on deep cuts in federal spending in exchange for raising that borrowing limit. And that's something Democrats in Congress and the White House say they're unwilling to consider.
It is something that should be done without conditions. We should not be negotiating around it. It is the duty, the basic duty of Congress to get that done.
So where does that leave us now? The senior senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, joins me now. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. So the White House says it won't negotiate on this.
Yep.
Your colleague Joe Manchin has proposed dealing with it by creating new committees to propose spending cuts and have these sort of expedited to the floor. Who's got the better idea?
Look, I want to think about it this way. This is a manufactured crisis. The debt ceiling is not real in the sense that it has something to do with constraining spending. We've already authorized all that spending. This is about the United States following through on its legal obligations. But here's the deal. The Republicans don't really care about the debt ceiling. And you know how I know that? I know that for multiple reasons. What they're really trying to do is make sure that the wealthy and the well-connected just don't pay their fair share in taxes. First bill out of the hopper for Republicans was to cut funding to the IRS so the IRS doesn't have money to go after wealthy tax cheats. Second thing they put right directly into the rules for the House this time around is if anybody wants to do any spending, no, because it'll add to the debt ceiling, but if you want to cut taxes for billionaires and giant corporations, you can add to the national debt to do that. Look, our problem is a problem on the revenue side. It's a problem that the wealthy and the well-connected are not paying a fair share in taxes. So we want to solve this problem. If the Republicans are serious about the national debt, then fine. Let's stitch up some of the corporate tax loopholes. Let's make billionaires pay a fair share. We can fix this problem.
Well, unsurprisingly, I'm sure to you and others, the Republicans don't see it that way. Let's listen to a brief summary from the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy,
Sure.
of how he views this issue.
But if you had a child and you gave them a credit card and they kept raising it and they hit the limit, so you just raised it again, clean increase, and again and again, would you just keep doing that, or would you change the behavior?
Your response?
That is like the dumbest analogy I think I've ever heard. Excuse me, the national debt is not like a credit card. It does not authorize spending. We vote as a Congress on spending, and that's what we've done in Democratic administrations, in Republican administrations. The better way to understand what Kevin McCarthy is saying is after you've run up the bill, maybe you could just tell all your creditors you're actually not going to pay them. That's the crisis he's trying to manufacture. And what he wants to do is make absolutely sure that the rich folks don't pay any more, but that we impose taxes on everyone else. And have you heard this crazy tax plan that they're now getting ready to vote on? The idea that they're going to put a 30% national sales tax on everything from rent to groceries to auto repairs to diapers. That's something that would be great for those at the top who pay less in income taxes and terrible for everybody else.
I hear what you're saying. What I'm not hearing is any acknowledgement that government spending has become excessive. Hasn't it?
Look, the problem we've got right now is a problem of an imbalance between revenues and spending. And it's not right just to say, oh, I know, let's do cuts and not take a look at the revenue side of this. Besides, look what happened the last time the Republicans manufactured this crisis, back in 2011. And they got a bunch of cuts in spending. And what was the consequence? The consequence was that they kept unemployment elevated, growth was suppressed, And a lot of people across this country felt that pain. And why? So that billionaires and giant corporations could keep escaping paying the taxes they owe. And that's just not right. This isn't about, do we need to make a cut here or a cut there? It's really about who pays, the rich or everybody else.
By the way, Senator, we're glad you made it in today because you're recovering from foot surgery.
I am.
I got to ask you to come clean now. Did you break your foot on the backside of a lazy regulator?
I did not.
Okay.
I actually keep up my exercises, so I'm
Okay.
strong enough to continue to do that.
Well, speaking of lazy regulators, you see how I did
Yes,
that
I saw that.
transition.
I saw that. Very good.
I recently watched the Netflix series on Bernie Madoff. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen this
It's
one.
pretty good. He, of course, famously lost billions of dollars in client cash because he was running a Ponzi scheme. And that federal regulators proved to be totally useless in dealing with, even though it was served up to them on a silver platter. Now, what does the alleged Sam Bankman-Fried FTX scandal tell us about today's federal oversight of the investment casino? Has it gotten any better?
So look, is there a problem with crypto? You bet there is. And partly it's about regulators who haven't used the tools that are available to them. But it's partly about the need on Congress's part to strengthen those tools. We've got a big problem with fraud, and we need to strengthen the tools there, and a big problem with money laundering. Remember, there are anti-money laundering rules to keep drug dealers and human traffickers and crypto gangs and countries like Iran and North Korea from being able to trade through the banking system, through credit cards, through Venmo, even through Western Union. But those anti-money laundering rules don't have the same kind of reach into crypto. We need the same kind of rules.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Congress and congressional oversight because there's a bipartisan group of representatives on Capitol Hill called the Blockchain 8. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
They've been running interference for the industry
Yes, they
against
have.
regulators like the SEC. Your colleague in the delegation, Jake Auchincloss, is one of the Blockchain 8. What's your advice to him going forward on this issue?
It's time to do an about-face. It's time to hold crypto to the same kinds of legal standards as everyone else. They don't get to engage in fraud, and they don't get to engage in money laundering. And you know, just make a different point here, John, though, that's related. This is one example of why it is that I'm so committed in running for re-election and the kind of fights that I think we need to have, not just over the next few months, but over the next several years. We have a fundamental question in this country about who this country works for. And I'm in this fight. I'll make the formal announcement about my reelection, sometime soon, and I'll be out and doing the town halls that I love to do all around the Commonwealth. But it's about the things we've actually shown that we can get done. We're in a place right now where electric school buses, we've just gotten a bunch of them down in Fall River. We're about to get them out in the Pioneer Valley, all paid for by my 15% minimum corporate tax on billionaire companies. We've got money, $5 billion coming into the Commonwealth for infrastructure, roads and bridges and water pipes. We've got this new bill is finally in place, or new law is in place, so people with hearing loss can buy hearing aids over the counter. It's the reminder, government can do real good here. It can do real good on the regulatory front. It can do real good in leveling the playing field. But you got to be willing to be in that fight, and that's the fight I'm in.
Well, when you first ran for the Senate a decade ago,
Yep.
over a decade ago now, you famously told an audience that successful business people have an obligation to give back more to society in exchange for the help we gave them building their business, maintaining it, policing, and services like that. Let's take a look at an excerpt from that infamous rant, if you'll pardon the expression.
Okay.
There is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you, but I want to be clear, you moved your goods to market on the roads the rest of us paid for.
Yep.
You hired workers, the rest of us paid to educate. You were safe in your factory because of police forces and fire forces that the rest of us paid for. You didn't have to worry that marauding bands would come and seize everything at your factory and hire someone to protect against this because of the work the rest of us did. Now look, you built a factory and it turned into something terrific or a great idea. God bless. Keep a big hunk of it. But part of the underlying social contract is you take a hunk of that and pay forward for the next kid who comes along.
Okay, so I noticed, by the way, you keep your hands lower these days. Is that by design or by training? Or
Nope.
Okay. Well, basically, that's an appeal for balance, right? A balance between profit and obligation to society. And right now, on a number of fronts, for instance, green building codes, there's talking about rent control coming back here in Massachusetts. Builders and landlords are saying to government, look, you're stifling our ability to build new businesses, to provide housing that's affordable, to maintain our properties. How do you find that proper balance between fairness and stifling growth?
So, John, are you seriously making the argument right now that the big problem is that the rich and the investors and the giant corporations over the last 10 years since that video happened have somehow been stifled and have not gotten richer and richer and richer, while hardworking families have struggled more and more and more? You're right. We do need balance. But part of the balance we need is we got to stop these billion-dollar corporations that pay how much in taxes? Zero. We have to stop this business of billionaires who say they have no income. Jeff Bezos pays less in federal income taxes than a Boston public school teacher. And look how much richer he has gotten over the last 10 years. So yes, I'm all for balance, but I'm for the kind of balance that says those at the top, we all helped invest in giving you an opportunity to make it big, and we're happy to celebrate that you made it big. But come on, guys, pay something back in so the next kid has a chance to make it big, and the kid after that, and the kid after that.
Obviously, a big part of your role, and you and the rest of the delegation, is to bring home the bacon from Massachusetts. And one of the biggest slabs of bacon out there is the partial federal funding for replacement of the Bourne and Sagamore bridges to the Cape. We struck out on 2 rounds last year of that. What went wrong?
The applications for it. You know, I want to start by saying I realize everybody likes to call federal spending bacon. I actually call replacing bridges that are way past their useful lifespan and would cost literally $200 million just to give temporary repairs to. I like to call replacing those as things we desperately need.
But you will admit bacon is delicious.
I love bacon.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, but here's the point on the bridges. The rules have been set up. We have a lot of money coming in and available for infrastructure. But the state, I think of it this way, the state has to be able to pick the fruit. At the federal level, we've planted the trees. The trees have borne fruit. We watered the trees. We got them ready. And now the state has to pick the fruit. It's got to put in a qualifying application for this money. And part of what's happened up to now is those applications where you got a plan in place and you're ready to start putting shovels in the ground before long. The state has not been in that place. This latest round has at least put $1.5 million into the state to say, would you please get your plan together and come and apply for this money in a way that you'll get it.
Well, what happened here, there's been plenty of money flowing through the state treasury.
Yes.
Was the Baker administration asleep at the switch?
Look, they did not put in a grant that met the federal qualifications. And we've got to put in grants that meet those qualifications if we're actually going to get any kind of money to get this done. People at the federal level understand these bridges have to be replaced. And I make this a first priority, so does Ed Markey, so does everyone in our delegation. We will get those bridges replaced, but we got to have a plan from the state.
We have just about a minute and a half left here,
Sure.
Senator, but you said earlier you're a candidate for re-election. You've been making that clear. Last week, The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, I hope I'm not botching her name, announced she'll be stepping down after 7 years in office. And she said, quote, "We give all that we can for as long as we can, and then it's time," end quote. Now, she's 42.
Yeah.
You've said, forgive me if this is rude, but you've said you're running for a third term in 2024. That means you'd be 81 by the time that term is up. Will that be it for you?
You know, look, nobody goes into any job saying, I want to make myself a lame duck from the beginning. For me, John, it's about the fight, though. I am in this because I believe so thoroughly in what we can do, because I've done it, and what we can do going forward. I'm going to give you one example on this. When I ran 10 years ago, I said one of the big things I thought we needed as a nation is to double our investment in science. And I said, I'm all in to make this happen. Now, it's taken 10 years, but this last August, that's exactly what happened. We doubled our national investment. National Science Foundation is going to have twice as much money, not just for 1 year, but for the next 5 years. These are the fights that sustain me, that keep me in this. It has been such an incredible honor to be able to fight these fights on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth, and I am deeply grateful that they have sent me there to do it. And boy, I'm ready to do it.
It's not often we see an elected official rubbing their hands at the thought of the fight, but
You bet.
It's good to have you here. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here with you.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.